Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about blockchains and bros. So let's get into it. So the question in question was literally, bro, what do you think about hashtag blockchains? So the short and easy answer is that I believe that blockchains are the first major innovation in quite some time in the banking world, or like in the finance world, where we're talking about technological innovations, of course, not financial products or something like that. And the second thing I believe is that it is all but pointless for job purposes. And the third one is that I don't know what's going to happen, but I suggest that we are a little bit careful because of certain reasons. So let's just talk about the first thing here that might stand out to some people. What are you saying, Frederick? Are you saying that blockchain programming is pointless for job purposes? And I will go and I will say pretty much. It is pretty much pointless at this point. It's up there in the same realm as VR programming or things like this, where there are absolutely companies out there in the world who is using this sort of technology and making some money from it. But it is not the sort of thing that you should bet your career on, and it's definitely not something that you're going to see on job postings as a normal type of thing. I mean, you're better off learning things about encryption and security and things of this nature. Even hacking is more useful to an everyday programmer for most jobs than blockchain programming. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, and that doesn't mean that it doesn't have some type of traction, because it does actually have traction. It is, I would say, a very similar sort of situation to business insights and machine learning, and how that type of sphere is kind of working today. On average, there is more relevancy for machine learning and business insights than blockchains at this point. And that mainly has to do with the value that pretty much every single company can derive from having the ability to know their users, to know their target audiences and so forth. If you're familiar with the Facebook scandal and the Cambridge Analytica scandal and all of this sort of stuff, this sort of tracking of people's behavior and understanding their needs and desires and their personalities, these are the sorts of things that fall into the bucket of business insight. And this is extremely valuable to pretty much every single company on this planet. And some of the startups that are actually focusing on this sort of thing are actually in this category that is using machine learning and other methods of psychology to influence people, or to at least figure out who business people should call, who are like hot leads into new deals and behaviors and so forth. All of this stuff is extremely valuable, and although it's very rare that you find normal companies requesting this sort of competency from a programmer, it is fairly common in comparison to how many people are asking for blockchain programmers. So with that said, that doesn't mean that blockchain doesn't represent something that I think is very interesting. I mean, even both cryptocurrency and blockchains and stuff of this nature I think it's a very interesting time, and this concept is, I think, extremely interesting. I have a coworker that we usually have a few beers, and then we sit and talk about blockchains and cryptocurrencies and things of this nature. And when we specifically talk about blockchain, we have this fundamental argument between each other. It's all in good fun, of course, but we do. And I like to mess around with him a little bit on this topic. So he is a die-hard fanatic when it comes to cryptocurrency and blockchain and, you know, anonymous accounting and trust within, basically a new way of doing finances or controlling the financial market, right? And so I ask, he goes on fairly often about this idea that the beautiful part about the blockchain is that it is decentralized in a true sense, and that you can trust the chain. And my argument to him is usually that that is not actually true? And then this discussion always ends up with the same thing. So I will argue, and this is just me arguing, this is one of the things that that I believe could be a possible issue with this, is that if you have a network, there is no such thing as trust. Not on a network such as the internet. The reason why it's not possible to have a full trust in a network is because in theory it is possible for a third party to compromise all of the gateways and all the connections on that network. What that basically means is that on a small scale, a simple man-in-the-middle attack on your personal gateway that you have at home or your router is all that it takes for me to control all of the data traffic that goes in and out of your computer. So with that power, if I would have the ability to actually inject myself between those 2 points, between the point that you want to go to and your own computer, I actually own what you see. Now, this is how a hacker would compromise a single person's computer or a very small network of computers. The internet has a similar sort of setup, such as with ISPs and so forth, where you are getting your information from some point. Unless you have a truly peer-to-peer system where every computer is connected to pretty much every other computer in some fashion, it is in theory possible to compromise that entire system or that entire network. And my coworker usually says, yeah, that does sound like something that could happen, but it's never going to happen because it would be too hard to do something like that. And he's absolutely right. It's a very tricky thing to pretty much control the entire internet for a globally it would be extremely hard, but for a country, we've already seen initiatives, this is what I argue to him, we've already seen initiatives where this has already been happening. If you look at the Americans and NSA and like their attempts to do this, and then you look at Egypt and China for sure, these governments are trying their best to have to start to get control over at least their own part of the internet. So what I argue, and this is the final part of our argument, is that even if it's not feasible today to think that someone is going to try to control the entire internet just for the sake of doing so, because even if you could do it today, it would be extremely powerful. Imagine what would happen if blockchain programming became the norm. Imagine if I, as a group, whichever group, who has tons and tons of resources and money, realize that I can actually influence the financial market in a very, very direct way as long as I control the nodes on this network. What incentive would that give? As I was saying with the Facebook scandal and Cambridge Analytica, how far did people go just to get the right ad with the right message to the right person? It's already a discussion today whether or not democracy is truly dead or not, because of how powerful these these parties have become with the ability to market directly to people and influence people through social media. Being able to control social media, guys, is a fraction of the power you would have if you could control the economy in a similar fashion, if you could influence the economy in that way. So what I want you to take away from this is that blockchain programming is, the positive aspect is that we have an ability to actually recreate a fairer and possibly better, at least, way of working with finances and helping out quite a lot of people. So I think it's an extremely interesting topic. For job purposes, it's pretty much pointless at this point. It's not that widespread just yet. It's in a very experimental phase right now. And finally, I want to point out that it has taken hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years for us to build up an economy system based on banks and the traditional way we do finances, basically, that is sort of stable, at least these days. And I think that we should have a very similar type of caution when we're working with something that we can't really predict what the outcome will be, because if everything goes as planned, everything's going to be great. But if we underestimate how much influence the economy has, even though it's just, for the most part, a mental construct of ours, we might actually create a lot of damage. And I do believe that when you're working with forces that is beyond your own comprehension and beyond your control, we should be more cautious than normal. Have a great day.